Hello, everyone. Thank you for watching KETK Plus. I'm your host, Tristan Van Beem, and today we are reviewing a breakthrough in a nearly 40-year-old cold case murder in East Texas thanks to DNA technology. On March 8, 1987, the body of Ricky Heriage was discovered under a bridge on County Road 1500 Walnut Creek in Henderson County. Decades of dead-end leads and unprovable theories finally fruitioned into the ID of a suspect in the murder. A grant from the nonprofit organization known as Season of Justice helped the Henderson County Sheriff's Office develop a genetic profile, and joined with me today is Program Manager Kendall Mills, who is here to discuss the Season of Justice and how their work played such a crucial role in this case. Kendall, how are you doing today?
I'm doing good, Tristan. How are you?
I'm doing great. Thank you so much for asking. Thank you so much for coming on. I really appreciate it.
Absolutely. Thank you for having me.
Of course. And just to start things off, could you explain what the Season of Justice organization is and what it does for people in need of answers?
Sure. So we are a 501c3 nonprofit. We were founded in 2020 with the explicit purpose to provide funding for advanced DNA testing in cold cases conducted by private labs that wouldn't otherwise be available through your government lab, your publicly funded crime lab. And also to support families of, whether it's long-term suspicious missing person cases or unsolved homicides or violent crime where there is no evidence, to support families in getting awareness on their case and hopefully bringing in new information that way. But ultimately, our bottom line is to push or to help push cases to prosecution by providing the necessary funding for access to that technology or that new lead, whatever it may be.
All right, well, thank you for explaining that. I really appreciate it. And I was also looking at the Season of Justice website, and I saw that the organization will put up billboards for those who are still missing. Does the organization pay for those, or how does that process work?
Yeah, so we have two programs. So we are a grant program. We fund these cases. We provide that necessary funding that wouldn't otherwise be available through generous donations from private citizens like you and like me who
Mhm.
want to make a difference in these cold cases in an actual tangible way. And so a lot of times, our primary program is our DNA testing program, which we're going to talk about in a little bit. But we also have families where they have cases with long-term missing persons. There's no evidence. There's no DNA to test. They're still looking for their loved one, or unsolved violent crime where they have exhausted all leads, all available evidence has been tested, et cetera. And the only thing left to do is try to get some human intelligence, try to raise community awareness, just to remind the community that families are still here, they're still looking for answers, and hopefully jog the memory of somebody who maybe has information that they didn't think was important at the time. Um, but yeah, so that is our family grant program. Also, called our public awareness campaign program.
Now, I know we're talking about a case that happened over here in East Texas today, but does Season of Justice help solve these cases all over the United States? And if so, as a program manager, how do you guys handle all of those cold cases and try to help provide resources to those who need it?
That's a great question. Yes, we are nationwide. So far in 5 years, we have funded or supported over 240 individual cold cases through
Hmm.
billboards and through DNA testing. And honestly, while I would love to say that I have a direct hand in solving these cases, I get to live vicariously through the forensic scientists and the detectives working these cases. You can think of us as a third party finance department. The
Mm.
bills go to us for the work being conducted instead of going to the agency that does not have the funding, or instead of going to the family that does not have that money. The bills come to us and we pay those bills, and detectives hopefully get the results that they need, and then families get the awareness that they need. We do a lot more hands-on work with the family cases. Like we will support the billboard, creation. We will find the billboard location. We will hold the hand of the family from start to finish when it comes to purchasing a billboard and determining what's a good strategic, media plan to accomplish the goals for that particular case. But when it comes to law enforcement, that's all the forensic scientists and all the detectives that do the
Mm.
work. I just get to pay their bills and say thank you for for their dedication. So
Well, I like how you mentioned that you live vicariously through them. Have you ever witnessed the genetic testing in the lab, like firsthand? Have you gone in and see what they do, or do you kind of just, like you said, write the checks?
I've been very lucky that our vendor partners. So we work with any private lab in the
Mhm.
country that is accredited to handle forensic evidence, and there are some really wonderful labs out there that we've had the pleasure of being able to tour. There's one here in Texas. I'm actually in San Antonio, but there's one here in Houston that we have had the pleasure of touring, as well as a lab in Florida. That we have had the pleasure of touring. So yeah, I've been able to see the work that they are doing. It's phenomenal. And then also, just the genetic research for genealogy that is coming through. That's also really cool to watch. That just looks like a whole other detective. You think like from It's Always Sunny with Charlie and the all the different pins and
Mhm.
everything.
Yeah.
It's wonderful.
So was that the lab in Houston that helped solve this Ricky Heritage case, or is there another one that's closer to our area?
Um, so yes, it
It
was.
was?
We
Okay.
supported that. We supported the work that Othram did. That was the lab in Houston. And they do a very specific kind of
Mm.
DNA testing for genetic genealogy. We think of CODIS a lot of times. We think DNA profile, it goes into CODIS. And it does, but there are two different profiles or two different types of DNA profiles to one for genealogy, one for CODIS, and they are not one and the same, and they do not, work together. And so we funded the work that Othram did to generate a second profile for genealogy. And then the FBI, I believe, did the genealogy.
Okay, well, that's great to hear that you are working together. And now that I have some more background on Season of Justice and those watching have more background on it, can we kind of go over some background on what happened to Ricky Heritage? How was he murdered, and what happened back on that night in 1987?
So from what we know, Ricky was shot multiple times and he was thrown off a bridge. He was discovered by law enforcement, deceased later. I believe that there was evidence previously tested, not back in 87. DNA was just becoming a thing in the early 90s. And STR profiles weren't even, court standard till like 1991, I believe.
Hmm.
But, detectives collected evidence. They preserved it. And then, when Henderson County reopened that investigation, a couple years ago, they were able to successfully get an STR profile of an unknown suspect from, I believe it was an article of victim's clothing. And that was uploaded to CODIS. And much like many cases, that did not lead to any kind of match in CODIS. And so there was an unknown profile of the suspect sitting in the database, just waiting to be matched to something. Um, and that's where, genetic genealogy comes in.
Wow, and I love how you talked about genetic, what is it called? Genealogy? Is that how you say it?
Yeah, genealogy.
Genealogy. Okay, I want to make sure I get that straight because for about 38 years, Ricky's case was unsolved. But in 2019, a sheriff named Bodie Hillhouse gave the case another chance by sending clothing evidence from the crime scene to a forensic center in California, and the lab was able to obtain a DNA profile, but they couldn't really find a match for the DNA. And in 2022, the sheriff reached out to Seasons of Justice to conduct further analysis where this like cutting edge genealogical technology techniques were used. Can you explain to me what those what that edge technology is and how it helped this case?
Yeah, so Sheriff Hillhouse actually reached out to Othram, the lab in Houston that conducts that DNA sequencing. And so what it is, it's called SNP profile. It's a specific type of profiler. They're looking for specific types of DNA markers that um, can be compared genetically. And this is a much larger um, set of markers to look at for analysts to look at than an STR profile is. Where an STR profile is looking at 24 specific markers for CODIS, this is looking at hundreds of thousands or 10,000 plus markers, and a lot of that is specific to genetics, and that allows detectives a different way of finding and narrowing down that suspect pool, especially because at-home DNA tests have become more prevalent, and we have databases, two public databases where people like myself who have taken an at-home DNA test and want to contribute can opt in for their DNA to be searched, or their data, it's not, specific to them, it's all anonymous, but for their data to be searched by law enforcement in criminal investigations. And that's what leads to these breakthroughs in these cases. Genetic genealogists are detectives in their own right. And they are, phenomenal at building family trees backwards from that unknown profile, and then from hopefully maybe a distant cousin that has decided to upload her DNA. And then they work backwards, and that's what happened in this case. So yeah, it's a lot, but it's really exciting. It's really interesting.
Yeah, I
Get
know.
into it.
I've watched some documentaries on how this genealogy stuff works, and it's actually very cool. I mean, like you said, they work backwards, so they just try to kind of start at this broad spectrum, and then they just kind of reverse. They kind of just take out everything until they finally get to this little peak at the bottom. So that's always been very fascinating to me. And I just want to ask another question of the technology that helped match the DNA on Ricky's clothes to a man named Dallas Reynolds Casanova. He died back in 2008, by the way. This DNA was able to link Casanova to the crime scene, but does this DNA confirm that Casanova was the one who committed the murder, or is it just confirming that he's a possible suspect?
That's a really good question. I would say that that's probably a question for either the DA or Sheriff Hillhouse in their
Hmm.
investigation. I will say that standard practice, and what is acceptable in court. So FGG, or forensic genetic genealogy, is what we call a leads generator. It's a
Mm.
tool, an investigative tool, but it is currently not something that is admissible in court. So that DNA profile um, cannot be used directly in court. What will happen is investigators, once they have that identified suspect, they will then take a buccal swab and get that traditional STR profile and compare it to the unknown STR profile that exists in CODIS, to just have that confirmatory match. Now, whether or not this directly, implicates, that's where it gets really difficult. We know that DNA is there, but exactly how it got there is where the courts come in, where that that process plays out, so that that can be determined to the best of our abilities. Unfortunately, we do see a lot of our suspects in these cold cases deceased, and so at best, what we can at least do, or what sheriffs and like Sheriff Hillhouse can do, is provide information that this is most likely the person responsible. But yeah, that it does, it is disappointing when the person is already deceased and they don't get to see their day in court.
Yeah, I mean, that's fair. And yeah, honestly, that probably is more the law enforcement side. I just wanted to see if you from Season of Justice had anything to comment on that. But I also just want to ask, is there anything else that you would like to say to the viewers at home or anyone watching who needs or wants help in finding their missing family member or solving a cold case within their own family?
Yeah, absolutely. If you are, a victim or surviving victim of an unsolved homicide, unsolved violent crime, where you know that there is evidence in the case, I encourage you to share our program with your detective. When it comes to the DNA grant program, that is open to law enforcement only, because they've got jurisdiction over the evidence, and we want to make sure that any results that they get can be admissible in court. And follow that chain of custody. So you are a family member and you've got, a detective that there's evidence in the case, and they might just need the money. Then by all means, please share seasonofjustice.org. They can, there's a contact form on there. It's going to go directly to me. I'm more than happy to answer any questions and see if if their case is a right fit for our program. And likewise, if you have a missing person, long-term suspicious missing person where foul play is suspected, or you have an unsolved homicide and you just need the community awareness again, you just want to continue to raise awareness in your case, try to get some movement in that, please visit our website, again, seasonofjustice.org, and look at our public awareness campaign. We will be accepting applications for our 2027 program late next year.
All right. Well, thank you so much, Kendall, for coming on to the show and helping with this interview. I really appreciate all the insightful information you brought, and just want to say your organization is doing some great things, so I really appreciate that.
Thank you so much. Well, we appreciate you shining the light on these cases, because without y'all, I mean, we still wouldn't have the awareness that we need in all of the cold cases. So we appreciate it.
Of
Thank you.
course. Yeah.